It says recording on my end.
Yep, same
All
here.
right.
It also said it's being sent to other apps,
Mm-hmm.
Other apps. Other apps.
perhaps.
Perhaps the apps. Yeah, well, it looks like it's live streaming. Yeah. All right, good, good, good. So we'll start in 3 minutes. And then I'll introduce you, Lelanea, and then you'll take it from there.
Sure,
Okay.
thank you.
Very simple. Very easy.
Does everyone have a favorite one that they've heard so far on a particular topic? No.
Favorite what?
A favorite guest speaker came on and spoke to you, a favorite topic.
Oh, well, we've had like lots of guest speakers.
I know.
Oh, been
Really
doing
good
this
ones
for a few
too.
years. Oh, you noticed you went to
Hmm.
our YouTube channel. Well, thank you
Yeah.
very much for doing that. Chris
Yeah.
here.
The one who was hit by a car was one of my favorites. I
Wow.
forgot his name. Do you remember?
Yeah, he was hit by a car, so that totally interrupted our meeting, you know.
No, 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 no.
I'm
He
just
got hit
kidding.
by a car.
I'm
He got
joking.
hit by a car and he experienced a near-death experience.
Oh, yeah.
I could definitely see how one would have an NDE when hit by a car.
Mhm.
And Chris did a wonderful presentation. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Dan. Hello, everyone.
Chris had a transformative spiritual experience, a Kundalini awakening.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, I remember
wow.
that. Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, I had that. That was about 4 years ago or something, and yeah, changed my life. So when people invite me
4
to,
or 40?
what's that?
Did you say 4 or 40
Oh,
years ago?
I just said it changed my life for,
Oh,
um, but
4
yeah,
years ago.
what's that?
4 years ago, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it was about 4 years ago, and yes, everything in my life changed at that point.
Mhm. I had a similar thing, but it happened almost 48 years ago.
Wow.
mm.
All right, you guys. I'm gonna start the introduction. Let me just pull up this lovely photo. Okay, can you all see that? Okay, welcome to another wonderful Saturday spirituality group with our guest, Lelanea Fulton. Lelanea is a multifaceted wordsmith, storyteller, photographer, and transcendental mindset coach dedicated to humanitarian and anti-species activism. With her innate ability to perceive energetic patterns and her gift of clairsentience, she deeply connects with clients to co-create transformative journeys of awakening and self-discovery. Lelanea supports individuals from all walks of life, from politicians, change makers, coaches, and even parents, helping them release limiting beliefs, align with their purpose, and embrace their unique superpowers. Through one-to-one coaching, free to low-cost online workshops, and her new podcast, she empowers others to feel seen, validated, and purposeful, guiding them toward their path of belonging and significance. This is her calling. Welcome, Lelanea.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here. You guys are very kind and so welcoming. Thank you.
So, Lelanea, as we discussed in our email, you
Mhm.
can have as much time as you'd like to just to say whatever is on your mind and spirit in the next 15-20 minutes, or we could shift to other ways of doing things if you want to jump into right into Q&A. It's all up to you, Lelanea. You have the spotlight. Go ahead, Lelanea.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm feeling really called to have a conversation, to open up a container around the concept of unity consciousness. And unity consciousness isn't something new. It's a concept, a philosophy, a spiritual belief system that is centuries old. And with quantum physics and our new understanding of the universe, we're beginning to recognize that unity consciousness isn't so much a spiritual philosophy. It's actually a form of science. It's a better understanding of the baseline of the universal truths. And I have some personal experiences with unity consciousness or oneness that I'd like to share. And prior to sharing my personal story, I'd like to just touch on a little bit of information just to kind of prepare us to go into this space. So, as I mentioned, the interconnectedness of the universe through quantum entanglement, once connected particles remain in instantaneous communication. So, proving the underlying unity of the field. So the body, mind, and the world are expressions of a single vibrating quantum field. Everything is energy in motion, interconnected. And what we perceive as objects or as self are waveforms collapsed into perceived reality through observation and consciousness. And so, what does this mean on a metaphysical level? And so, in metaphysical language, separateness is the fall from unity into illusion, which has been referred through Buddhism as the Maya or ego identity. And the ego is a construct of the mind, filters reality through duality, self versus other, subject versus object, good versus bad, which this isn't a moral failure, but it's a perceptual distortion, a trance of forgetting the true self. And so, how does this relate to human suffering? So, most suffering arises from the belief of I am separate, I am alone, unworthy, isolated, unloved, invisible, and fear being the ultimate trigger of these beliefs. So, manifestations of this illusion of this great Maya is seeking love and validation externally, addiction, so numbing substances, addiction to stimulation, external attention, superficial intimacy in sexual form, feelings of emptiness, invisibility, or not being enough, over-identification with roles, labels, appearances, and beliefs, the compulsion to control, compete, or compare. Manipulation's a really big one, depression, and even resistance. And in both metaphysics and quantum models, consciousness is not in the body. It gives rise to the body and the world. What we call matter is condensed energy, and what we call self is a modulation of one infinite consciousness. So you are not a body with awareness. You are not awareness appearing as a body. You are a spiritual being having a human experience via a very intelligent avatar. So unity consciousness isn't a spiritual or a universal truth. It is a baseline, the natural state obscured by conditioning. It is the recognition that I am, and beyond the I am is we are. And I would even say beyond the we are, when we allow everything to merge, it just becomes am. So it is the return to wholeness, to source, experiencing itself through infinite forms of creation. And what I'm speaking of is not theory or philosophy. For me personally, it is a rememberings that occurred during an NDE when I was about 6 years old, and in numerous reality shifting events afterwards when the illusion of separateness cracked open. And these experiences are not extraordinary. They are deeply natural. They are the remembrance of what already is. So my experiences are not solely mine. They are ripples of a remembering that is actually happening across the collective. They are not mine alone, but are actually ours. And I am meant to share them with you to help you remember. So as I share, I invite you to fill into your own memory, not of events, but of essence. So the place in you that has always known, I am not alone, I am not separate, but I am we. As I mentioned, when I was about 6 years old, I entered into a drowning, and this was a near-death experience. In this particular space, I was underwater in a lake. And after the fear of death and the primal behavior of fighting to live, to survive, subsided, I entered a state where I surrendered to the transition. I became okay with the transition. I didn't feel the need to resist or really fight against it. And in this drowning process, I was moving between a POV of being under the water and from a POV of being above the water. And being above the water allowed me to view what was happening, to view my mother frantically searching for me. I could even feel her nervous system becoming extremely activated, moving into fight or flight, moving into fear because she couldn't find me. And I've written about this. I've also talked about it on numerous NDE podcasts. So for the sake of brevity, I won't go too into depth. But what came out of this was that as I surrendered, I moved into a space of oneness. And I began to fall in love with my surrounding, with even the process of dying. And I began to settle in and felt bliss and joy at the beauty of watching the particles of sand being kicked from off the floor of this lake and dancing and making its way to the surface where the sun was breaking the crust of this amber-hued water and hitting the pieces of sand and creating these beautiful fragments of light that were just cascading through the water. And at 6 years old, I remember feeling bliss and love, and everything around me was moving in slow motion as if everything was happening underwater, which essentially it was. And it was in this space that telepathically I was asked what I wanted to do. And I responded telepathically that my mother wouldn't know how to handle this, that it would destroy her. And so I had made the conscious decision to stay. And upon that conscious decision, instantaneously, I watched a woman make her way towards me. And I watched the ends of her long, beautiful braid that went down the back of her hair moving through the water. And I watched her body shift and almost cascade towards me, where she lifted me out of the water. And this lake was very small. It was a man-made lake that was buoyed off, and the parking lot was very small. So everyone knew who was parking. A lot of people were double parked. And there's, only one plot of earth, plot of land, shoreline that you can sit upon. So as we looked for this woman to thank her as we were starting to depart, we could not find the woman. No one knew of the woman. No one saw the woman. No one even saw the event of a little girl drowning. Not the lifeguard, not any other families, and no one said that they had to kind of move their car to let another family out. So this began an experience of feeling a connection to something much larger than myself. And this unity consciousness, this oneness, this understanding, this merging with everything around me, this remembering, would occur numerous times throughout my life. It would happen predominantly in nature, where I was surrounded by our natural space of being. In nature, we are merging with the consciousness that surrounds us. This consciousness is not just in moving through human form, it's all around us. And nature was a space that I would start to flex this muscle and start to participate in merging in that which was around me. And I would get glimpses of that bliss and that love. And I would get glimpses of that I am meant to be here. There's something greater than myself. And these little tremors became larger and larger. One occurring in a New York subway, where I was reading a book and had a shift. And I would refer to these as these experiences of oneness as pivots or shifts. I didn't have a name for them at the time. I didn't understand them at the time. And I always referred to them as a pivot or a shift. And it usually came with letting go of a belief or dislodging something energetically that felt like weight. And in this particular event, moving between boroughs in the subway system, I looked up after having this conscious shift, and everyone in the car was looking at me, and light was pouring from inside of them. And I was surrounded by a bunch of smiling New Yorkers. Now, if you spend any time in New York, you would recognize that's not a very common thing to be surrounded by very smiling, unactivated, calm New Yorkers. And it was a brief moment, it was seconds of seeing this light pouring from inside out. People were highly illuminated, and I sat in this feeling of bliss and love. And it was even larger than the one felt in the NDE. I chalked it up to the book. I thought, this is a really good book. I should probably tell everyone about this book. I didn't recognize that this was happening internally within me. And we moved to the largest one that just recently occurred a few summers ago. And again, I was navigating in a threshold between countries this time. And I was sitting in a car navigating between Canada and the US, and traffic was moving very slowly. So I pulled out my book and read my gene keys as I was inching forward every 4 to 5 minutes. And an event occurred where I found myself judging my neighbor in a nearby car. And I caught myself criticizing them, judging them, putting them in a label, in a box, based off the music that they were listening to. And I went back to reading the gene keys, and I had this subtle shift. And I heard a voice that actually outside of myself, and this has happened quite a few times in my life, this voice outside of me said, Lelanea, do not judge them. They are you. And I caught myself panning over and looking inside the car and spending time looking and observing these individuals. And I started thinking, man, I bet these are really nice people. They look really calm and beautiful. I bet I would really like hanging out with them. And within seconds, this shift that occurred became so palatable and so textured that it changed my perception of time and space. The trees, the leaves that were blowing in the trees around me started to slow down and move in a wave-like motion that would occur underwater. I started observing 2 young boys playing football, and I began to merge with them and actually start feeling their emotions. I was feeling the excitement of running in this open field and throwing this football back and forth with the sun shining and the wind blowing and the giggles and the play and the excitement. And I could feel every ounce of it. And it shot me back to this experience of when I was a child playing football. And as I observed these boys, I thought, this is incredible. How the hell am I feeling them? I'm feeling them, and time and space is shifting and people's movements are shifting. And now light is pouring out of every individual. Now light is coming out of their eyes. And I'm seeing this light shift, and it's moving between trees, and it's moving between the grass, and it's moving from families, and it's moving back to me. And I recognize this as consciousness. And as this experience progresses, it enhances and it builds. And I began, for the first time in all of these experiences to happen, to actually start hearing information that was being provided to me. And I had an innate sense that if I repeat what I'm hearing, then there's a greater chance that I'll actually remember it when this experience is over. I recognized I was way deep in an incredible experience. And what I didn't realize until I came out of the experience is that I was sobbing from how much love and bliss I was feeling. I have never felt, I've done many psychedelics to experience God, source, universe, myself, and none of them have ever provided a feeling like this. This was coming from source. This is coming from inside. This can't be manipulated externally. And I'm sobbing and smiling from ear to ear. I'm sure I look like a lunatic. And people were passing by my car and I could feel them. I could hear their stories. I could feel their emotions. And as the information started pouring through me, I started hearing myself speak out loud. I was hearing a message that through emotions, we all can experience the individual avatars. Each one of us, we're all the same person. I am you, you are me. We decided when we incarnated to be different individuals, to have different experiences, so that these experiences are relayed back to source. And in the human experience, through empathy and through the connection of emotions, I can actually witness and experience your experience, the parts of it that really matter the most. And this is the information that we relay back to source. And in this shift of consciousness, I had a remembering. So I compare it to observing someone with amnesia or someone with Alzheimer's, and how they go into a space of forgetfulness where they don't even recognize family members. They feel like these family members are familiar. They see photos of them all over the wall, and you can start to convince them, yeah, this is your brother. This is your son. This is your partner. And they go, well, yeah, that makes sense. I do see photos of them everywhere. And they'll start to go along with it. But then there will be a moment where the amnesia of forgetfulness drops. And all of a sudden, it's a full-bodied experience of, oh my God, I remember you are my son. You are my husband. And then they have a full-bodied emotional remembering. And this is where I entered. I entered into a full-bodied emotional remembering that I am source. And I was observing source, remembering that it was source. So not only am I sending information back to source, as we all are, but I actually remembered that I was source and who I was. And the tears flowed and the love poured out of me. And I continued to just feel the resonance of everyone and everything around me, watching this bead of silver energy moving between myself and everyone, and the illumination of all that around me. And as quickly as I said the last word of the last message that was given to me out loud, like a balloon, all of it started to deflate. And now all of a sudden the trees started, the speed of the movement of the breeze and how they responded to the breeze started to pick up. The kids that were over to my right were now over to my left, who I had witnessed and was participating with them again. Now, all of a sudden, the ball that they threw moved much faster through space-time, and their speed of movement rapidly picked up. And I could feel everything that I was seeing around me, the illumination started to become a little bit more dulled. But the love and the bliss was still in me, but I could still feel it starting to deflate. And I knew that I was coming out of the experience. And so these are my personal rememberings with unity consciousness. And what I recognize is that once was perceived metaphysical, spiritual, and even for some people who are not on this, that this doesn't resonate with, they may even perceive it as woo-woo. But what we're learning is that through our conscious evolution and our shifting, so is our perception of science, what we're able to perceive. And this science is backing up this information. And I am not the only person who's having these experiences, these visions. Other people also are having these rememberings, which are backing up the findings in quantum physics and backing up centuries old information coming from great sages and the great rishis. And we're in a great remembering. And through this process, I'm here to share my experiences. I do hope more are to come. But I am here to share these experiences and even the behaviors or the tactics or the third density human behaviors that I've started to adopt to help me remain in conjunction with my learnings, with these rememberings. So that is my story, and I'm totally open to Q&A if anyone feels called to ask a question or to share.
All right. Well, I'll be the first if there's no one else who would, if you'd like to raise your hand or, oh, and Mika, by the way, you're a co-host also. Chris, you're both co-hosts, and you can help me to run this group today. And oh, and we have a number of hands. All right, all right. So let's start with Angela Serio. You must unmute, Angela. All right, Angela, come on, you can do it. We know you can do it. And oh, there you go.
I am muted. I'm just having a little trouble with my phone this morning. That was wonderful. I enjoyed your talk so much. I have had several experiences similar to what you were talking about, and I have never heard them expressed more coherently.
Oh, thank
I
you.
I really thought it was great.
Thank you.
But the tie-in to quantum physics, I mean, I've been into this for a long time. And when they first started discovering quarks and stuff like that, what came to my mind was that the grand unifying force that they're looking for is consciousness itself,
Mm,
which, like you said, is spread over everything.
mhm,
It's not unique.
mm-mm.
But thank you. I really enjoyed your talk.
Thank you, Angela. And I love your feedback. I completely agree.
Chris and Mika, can you see all the hands and all the folks? Yes? All right. So I'm gonna take a step back. Mika, why don't you come forward and practice your facilitation skills?
All right, thanks, Dan. I guess next in line for people that have their raised hand is Harvey. And I see you,
Bella.
Katie.
Yes, thank you, Mika. This is an amazing synchronicity because this year I came up north. I usually live in West Palm Beach, and I came up north to be with my niece and nephew up in Swampscott, Massachusetts. But then I came down to the city, and before I even came down to the city, I wanted a place to stay that would be special for me. And it turns out that the place that I stayed at was the place that in 1976 I was actually thrown out of. And what's most important to me about the story is, though, in 1974, in this very place that I was staying in for the past three nights when I was in New York, this was the place where I read a book as part of a workshop leadership training program. And the book was written by Abraham Maslow, and it was called Religions, Values, and Peak Experiences. And that was the thing that I was able to kind of hang my past experiences on. But it went much, much further for me after that, because with that expulsion from this apartment house, I actually came to the realization, the way I would put it, that the universe is my womb. But it's not just my womb, it's everybody's womb. But you have to believe that to make that a reality for yourself. And so this is very special that you bring it up, because for me, peak experiences was my first entry into the concept of that comes out of quantum physics, which is the unity, the connectedness of everything to everything, and the field especially. And I've been working lately with the work of Lynn McTaggart. And her intention experiments, and they truly are beautiful opportunities to experience this great mystery that is unfolding. So thank you for bringing all this together for me today.
Thank you, Harvey. And just to piggyback on the womb, right? And so that's my experience, as I mentioned, going into nature, spending a lot of time in nature, is that everything has electromagnetic frequencies, right? Trees do, it's been scientifically studied and written about. And I found that immersing myself in nature allowed me to recalibrate and allowed my frequency to be in a natural state where I wasn't being affected by the energy or the frequencies or the auras, the electromagnetic fields of others. So these were spaces for me that were like a womb where I could gestate, where I could go inward, and where I could really truly experience my vibration and how my vibration would shift and change in different environments. And it was a beautiful way to get very much connected to myself, so that when these experiences did occur, that I didn't doubt myself or gaslight myself, that I could actually lean into it because I knew my natural state.
It's beautiful. Kira, you have your hand up as well. And
hi, yeah, thank you. I guess I want to ask, like, my understanding of all things science is like friction, so it's, sort of push and pull, and, unity and separateness. Like, I have not had an experience like you were talking about. Somebody I know has, and he, had an experience where, felt, beautifully connected. And then he's also had experiences where he's felt sort of the opposite. So I just wanted to ask you, like, what do you think about the friction and connected and isolated and things like that? Yeah, thank you.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, Kira. Thank you. That really allows me to segue into what I feel is a very important piece of this whole experience and this remembering and the information, and even the work that I do supporting other people who are transitioning and who are remembering. And so we talk about densities, or at least for me, I understand it in densities. And so having duality and polarity in the human experience is what allows us to play within the spectrum of separateness and oneness, right? And so we need the duality, we need the polarity to really understand what separateness is. And what I recognize is that the more separate we believe ourselves are from source, from consciousness, from everything that is around us, and I tend to see that more in individuals who lean into what I perceive as the third density, or the human experience, the material experience. And as we lean more into the material experience, separate from nature, perceiving ourselves separate from nature, not moving into natural spaces, not working with our nervous systems to move out of a hyper stimulated space of activation, of fight or flight that's continuous due to the material world that we humans have created. And so when we're consistently in that space, we create separateness. We are continuously leaning into the Maya, or the polarity, or separateness, or duality, right? And duality is so important because without duality, it's very difficult to remember you are source. If we think about all the changes and all the growth that we've made in our lives, in our human incarnation, it's usually through contrast. It's usually through resistance. It's usually through challenges, right? And so we need that pressure, that duality, that constriction to better understand our experiences and what we want to lean towards, what feels of a resonance and what doesn't. We automatically know when we're in a place of resistance that we're resistant to, or we're in a place of duality that doesn't feel right. We're like, I don't want to experience this. This doesn't feel right. And we know that, especially if you bring up the subject of love, when you're in a partnership or with somebody and it doesn't feel kind, we know this doesn't feel like love. This feels like manipulation. This feels like control. Like, this doesn't feel like pure love. And it's that knowing of this doesn't feel right that allows us to turn and shift and start looking for what we feel love is supposed to look like and feel like. And that's as we deprogram from what we've learned in the human incarnate, from society, from culture, from family dynamics. So as we let go of what we thought was love, then we can start moving towards what we truly know love is, and what it should feel like, and what we want it to feel like, right? And that's duality. And as we move towards what we know real love feels like, we start to find it within ourselves. And then that is the removal of separateness. That is coming back home to self. Because as we lean into that innate understanding of what, like, that raw love is, we find it within ourselves, which means that we can then start seeking it externally outside of ourselves, in others who have also resonated with that understanding of love. So that is the importance of friction, resistance, duality, polarity. Those we can use those as tools. So in awakening the remembering of oneness in the third density of the human experience, we can start to move towards oneness and unity consciousness in the human experience through becoming the observer of self, through leaning into the space between big S self and little s self. So between the soul and the ego, which ultimately collapses the illusion of Maya, right? And then questioning and unlearning. So as we question everything we think we know, what we think we know about relationships, what we think we know about love, what we think we know about source, religion, even our education. Through questioning and unlearning and challenging our own beliefs, no matter how mundane, question them, challenge them, and seeking commonality in everyone you meet and how they reflect flaws and all. So the more you dislike an individual and you feel triggered by them, that is a mirror calling you in to understand what part of them that you dislike is actually within you. And when we can lean in and we can start to see that we have more in common, even with those we don't like, we can't stand, who irk us, who we feel are evil or bad, we start to diminish the illusion of other and self. So we start to merge. And so gratitude changes perspective and brings awareness of natural abundance. And source is abundance. And every one of these experiences that I've had, the feeling of bliss and pure love came with abundance of everything is perfect. Everything is exactly how it's supposed to be. And everything I need is actually all around me in consciousness, in energy, right? So source is abundance, and your natural state is abundance. And also using nature to co-regulate. It is our vibrational timekeeper. Nature is so incredibly important. And we're watching our forests being destroyed. These are our timekeepers. These are our sacred spaces, our wombs of gestation. These are incredibly powerful, sacred spiritual places for us. And it is paramount that we create resistance and we push back against those who are wanting to destroy what is essential for us on a human level and on a spiritual level. And two more is to play with the edges of your being and allow yourself to merge with others, losing sense of where they end and you begin. And I recommend doing this with nature first. You really must trust another individual, not trust what they say, but trust where they're at before you merge with them, because you're merging energy, which is a byproduct of beliefs, of behaviors, of mindsets. And you want to make sure this person's at a similar frequency. To merge with somebody who is at a very low vibration can be impactful and not in the best of ways. So I recommend using nature first. Allow yourself to merge with a tree where you lose sense of where you end and they begin, where the space between starts to collapse. And depression and anxiety, fear, desire to numb, distract, or turn off is natural when we lean too far into the egoic self, into the Maya. And so forgetting and distinguishing our relationship with self. So when we start to feel these, they are the canary in the coal mine that we're losing sense of our spiritual self. And Dr. Lisa Miller wrote an incredible book called The Awakened Brain. And it is scientific data on the research of brains of individuals who have awakened and actually how it affects the brain. And those who have awakened have a greater resistance to depression. And if they do fall into depression, they move out of it very quickly. Whereas those who have not awakened or stepped into a spiritual life and recognizing that they are one with everything around them and everyone tends to lean into it's an unhealthy mindset, which leans into depression, anxiety, fear of everyone around them. Everyone's out to get them, right? Very skeptical of those around them. So I hope that additional information supports you. I see some hands.
Katie, Katie, do you want to?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lelanea. Wow. Why is my video not working? There we go. I really, really appreciate what you presented. One of the things I even put that in my chat is you reminded me of my almost drowning when I was 6 years old.
Mm,
That it was the same year. And I remember falling under the water and my parents freaking out, but that I felt totally calm. I was just in the water and I was looking at the top of the water and going, wow, this is interesting. I wonder if this
mm,
is the end. And that's okay if it is. And then, of course, my parents dragged me out and I was fine. Um, and it also reminds me of uh, I have been in some very questionable relationships,
mhm,
and one of them was my ex-husband had decided that I was responsible for losing an important thing that he had lost. And he came after me like he was going to kill me. So I
mm,
ran into the woods and
mm.
I just started praying and I put my arms out and was praying really hard. And my friends came out. It was their house. They came running into the woods because they thought he had killed me. And I was praying with my arms out, and both of us realized that there were butterflies flying around my arms, doing figure
Oh,
eights over my body, just like this outline, almost an
mhm.
oral outline, but made out of butterflies.
Oh,
And we're both, are you seeing this? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, me too. I guess this means I'm being protected. And then there was my brother died, and the next day I went to my favorite place in nature because I that is where I am the most comfortable, as you were talking about.
mhm,
And I went down to the pond that I love to sit, and sometimes frogs serenade me, and it's just this beautiful place. And all the water was gone, and I didn't hear any animal sounds. I thought the whole place was dead, and I was so upset. My brother's dead, and my sacred place isn't even here anymore, and how dare they? And I noticed that the mud that had been left in the pond had all these tracks through it, like ATVs had run across my sacred pond with their motors. And I was
mhm,
so angry, and I was so hurt and so lost. And all of a sudden, a blue heron, which I had never seen before, flew up and did figure eights in front of me dancing. Other birds came and they were dancing. And I just thought, okay, that's amazing. Blue heron, yeah, that's what my brother used to complain because I always focused on the blue heron driving him to work. And okay, so maybe that's a representation he's okay. And then I was still angry because my beautiful, beautiful pond was gone. And then I noticed that one of the rocks in my beautiful pond was moving. And I thought, oh no, I'm just having a hallucination. No, it was a large turtle. Snapping turtle who did not want to be noticed. And then the whole pond seemed to be moving. And again, I thought, oh, I'm just
mhm,
distraught. I'm depressed. I'm freaking out. And so finally, what I did is I picked up my phone to magnify it to see what could possibly be happening. And it was over 30 turtles that were making those tracks, and they were all heading towards me. My dead place was very much alive,
aw,
but in a different form.
mhm, mhm,
And that made me realize it was time for me to change.
mm,
And so I went from extreme distraught depression
mhm,
to going, oh, everything's going to be okay. I'm
mhm,
always reminded of that when I go into nature. And that particular place to me is so sacred that I always say a prayer that it be protected forever before
mm,
I leave every single time. And what you're saying today, it just reminds me so many experiences I've had, both in nature, but you were talking about traffic, where I was holding my boa constrictor and she wanted to have her head out the window to feel the air while we were stuck, and and stuck her tongue out at a driver in the next lane and freaked them out a little bit because I think they thought she was fake until she stuck her tongue out. Uh, there's so many amazing experiences, and if we're just trapped in ourselves, like I've been since January 22nd, I've been bedridden, and I have not once prayed to get up and be well. I have prayed to, what is this experience supposed to be teaching me? And I look out the window every day, and there's a tree that I was fascinated why there's a little branch that started to grow, but it's not growing, and why. And finally found binoculars that just appeared in my room that I've been looking for over a year. And it's when the tree splits into two branches, it actually sloughs part of the bark. So that was fascinating. And when I was little, I would be bedridden for long periods of time and watch spiders do these beautiful, intricate webs that I would watch for hours. And this is reminding me all of that. The sickness has forced me to reevaluate where I am and where I need to be. And I thank you for your presentation. I have one question for you, though. What is anti-species activism?
So, anti-species or anti-speciesism is recognizing that there is no difference between us and other species. So, we tend to create, let me think how to word this. So, the other, right? We're constantly othering others. And we adopted that philosophy legally in order to justify slavery. We did it to indigenous nations as the colonizers completely wiped them out in some of the most atrocious ways. And then we also treat animals this way. And so you can learn a lot about a particular culture or society based on how they treat those that they feel are of a lower consciousness than they are. And what I recognized through these events of oneness is that the energy that moves through me moved through the trees and moved through the birds and moved through all life that was around me. The manifestation of that energy is dependent upon the avatar, but the energy is the same. And how we alter our physical bodies, the avatar, which we have numerous energetic bodies, and how we alter them, allowing ourselves to be porous to receive the greater energy, is the input of what level of consciousness we allow ourselves to receive and to operate. But the consciousness around us is all the same. So a dog or a cow has just a right to be here and are just as beautiful as beings. And when we start changing how we other animals, it will also force us to change how we other and how we create a caste system within our societies that we pin those that we don't recognize or aren't familiar or aren't comfortable with. And we see this in the political arena. We see this in cities. We see this in school systems. We see this in caste systems in other countries, in the invisible caste system that is here. And so I perceive all life as having a right to be here and a right to live because it's all consciousness.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. It reminds me of when I was student teaching special education, and I was told that, oh, your clients, they only have an IQ of 37 at the top, and there's not much you can teach them. And one day I went in, I found out they'd been doing the same task for 5 years. Of course, they couldn't do it because they were bored out of their minds. So I came in, I had 40 women in groups of 10. And so that day I walked in and I said, they tell me you can't understand a word I say. I think they're wrong. I think you understand everything I'm saying. So you do your task one time correctly today, you will never see that task in front of you, and you can choose whatever you want to learn.
Mhm.
This is right at the beginning of the right to education for all
Mhm.
people, for handicapped specifically. And how many people do you think accomplished their tasks that day? I had 40 women, all with an IQ very, very low. Ha ha.
Mhm.
How many?
I want to say all of them.
Yes.
Mhm.
And the next day I brought in every task we had available, and I asked them each to choose what they wanted, and every single one of them chose something so much more advanced, to the
Mhm.
point where my manager did not believe they could do it. And one woman had done this really complicated parquetry pattern, and my manager showed up and said, there's no way she could have done that.
Mm.
And she said, make her do it again. I'm like,
Mm.
okay, she's my student. And I
Mhm.
said, would you do it for Marge? And the student, because she was
Mhm.
nonverbal.
Mhm.
And I said, okay. And I knew I needed to have this happen. So I said, would you do it for me as a favor? I know I
Mhm.
told you you're done with the task for the day, but please, as a favor, just to me, would you redo it?
Mhm.
Then she redid the pattern so fast, I could not have done it that fast.
Mm.
And then she got, ha! And got
Mhm.
up and left, and my manager's jaw was on the floor. And I'm like,
Mhm.
yes, you have to show respect.
Mhm.
And I walked out of every job where every administration told me that my students or my clients were other
Mhm.
than me, that I
Mhm.
was supposed to call the girls that I was the home manager for, that I was supposed to call them sluts on a daily basis and put them in their place. I'm like, no.
Mhm.
My father taught me that every being is valuable.
Mhm.
Everyone deserves respect. And thank you for
Mhm.
reminding me that
Mhm.
beautiful lesson my father taught me. Thank you, and I've taken enough of your time.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Katie. Tiffany, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I'll have to get back the speaker's picture. I want to say, Lelanea,
Mhm.
oh, thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Yeah, it's so funny because I've been doing the spiritual walk for a long while here now, right? And the one thing that and I'm trying not to argue with you about it. Like I don't want to start an argument about it, but I really have a hard time with that.
Mhm.
You're the same as me, because
Mhm.
there's people that I don't like,
Yeah.
and I don't like them because of them.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and because and then because I like that part where you were saying about that energy merging piece,
Mhm. Mhm.
and to be mindful of how
Mhm.
you do that with other people, because
Mhm.
everybody's not in the same place, right?
Mm-mm.
um and see, but some of those people that aren't in the same place will find themselves in the spiritual world, and
Mhm.
then they'll use that "you don't like me because of something inside of about because I'm a mirror," and it gets
Yeah.
real gaslighty there,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So I just wanted, because no, there's some people that are definitely malevolent
Yeah.
for whatever reason,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm malevolent.
Mhm. Yeah.
So how do I think I'm comfortable with how I feel about it, you
Yeah.
know, but I think that my question is as we're broadcasting and we're talking to other people, right?
Mhm.
The
Like,
same thing we do for one estate like that.
how do we resolve? Do you have a resolve for that piece there? A way
Yeah.
that we Rubik's cube around that? And I think that you've said it in increments throughout,
Mhm.
but like, how do we like put that all in like one orb?
Yeah. So I'm going to use a little bit of a personal history with you. I'm going to share a little bit of a personal experience and hope that I answer it in this way. So I chose a family. We all chose families that have some sort of intergenerational trauma, some unhealed wounding, some pattern behaviors. Not only did we choose a family to incarnate that has that, but we also chose a country that has its own, a society, a culture, a state that has these patterns of unhealed wounding, right? And the one I chose to come into has diagnosed sociopathy, has alcohol addiction, has patriarchy, has cruelty at the highest level, has abuse, manipulation at a high level. And I wouldn't have been able to do this work and to observe myself if I had remained embedded in that energy, right? I had to separate, create separateness in order to come back to self. And when I encounter other individuals that express or manifest that same pattern of energy in similar ways that I recognize that are familiar for me, that I find myself either, if I'm in a more conscious place, I will create resistance and space between myself and that other individual. If I'm feeling my nervous system is activated, triggered, on edge, then I am more likely to respond from a subconscious place. And that subconscious place is judgment. So the higher frequency of this is discernment of, this feels familiar. Let me drop in and understand why. Oh, I'm recognizing a pattern from that feels familiar and familial. And I recognize this as a pattern associated with sociopathy, right? And so in discernment, I recognize that's not for me and I can move away from it. If I'm in a low vibrational place, then I judge it, I act subconsciously, and I project and I respond, I react. And instead of going inward to question the experience, I automatically say, this is about this person's wrong, this person's this person's that. I start placing judgments, labels, and boxes, right? And when I really tune in and drop into myself, the reason I recognize that energy is because, and why it's so triggering to me, is because that energy, even that of sociopathy, because it's in the DNA of the family, it's in the environment, it's a cult, it's a pattern, it's a culture that's a part of the family I incarnated into. There's an element of it in me. So it's almost like an anti-venom, right? We get bit by a snake, they put venom in us to counteract the venom as an anti-venom, right? So there's a frequency of that in me that allows me to recognize it in another. I just choose not to manifest it or respond from it because I've done enough inner work. And I remember my childhood coming to a fork in the road where I could behave in this way and exercise behaviors associated with the pattern of sociopathy or narcissism. And I remember recognizing the pattern and saying, that's not who I want to be. And I made a choice. And I believe that all of us have had that crossroads of operating from a shadow wounding or frequency that exists in our familial line. And some of us respond subconsciously and some of us respond consciously. And this is what it means to deprogram and to interrupt the pattern. And I believe more of us are pattern interrupts than not. We came here with the desire to break familial patterns. So this being said, when I'm triggered by somebody, instead of saying this person's a jerk, this person's manipulative, I can actually, or controlling, if I'm around an individual, because controlling is a huge programming for me. When I'm around an individual who's controlling, I'm super resistant and reactive, and I instantaneously don't like you. But then I'm like, ooh, let's sit with this. And I'm like, I'm actually being controlling. Because I feel they're being controlling, I'm reacting with controlling because I think if I can control, if I can top over, if I can dominate, then you can't dominate me. But if I actually recognize you could never dominate me, what are you going to do? You can never have control over me because I have all this, I have true sovereignty. You have nothing. And once I reassure myself, they have no power.
So that's my question, right? Right there is that part, right? And I like that you said. What's the advice? Because I guess you know what? The more I listen, is my controlling nature comes up that wants to save everybody from having to go into it, right? But there is also an element of some people just have to learn it, boots on the ground.
So some of us are raised in environments where we feel we have to save or protect a family member. So now we become a martyr and we become a savior. And that is a part of a programming that kept us safe in childhood. But we have to let go of it because now it just went from saving and protecting those who were more vulnerable
to trying to control
now controlling and dominating because we're trying to save them from themselves. And we all came here with the desire to have different experiences. And you may think you're saving, but you're actually keeping them from their purpose and their dharma and why they incarnated and why they're here. And then that desire to save and protect becomes control and domination. See how easily it shifts?
It's, you just got to sometimes just get the popcorn and watch the sparks fly with some people and in some situations.
And just hold them and hug them when they come to you, and then ask them, reflect back their experience. What could you have done different? What did you learn about yourself? What did this feel like?
And then as soon as you feel something, and this is something that I had to learn, on that for somebody who wants to avoid it as much as possible, I would say as soon as you feel something funny in yourself, go to it's true. That would be my advice to anybody, because I've gotten caught up with like 4 deep sociopaths, like deep. And I felt it before go.
Yeah, you know it, but you gaslight yourself.
Trying to save them. So that's what I would tell anybody is if you don't like something, there's a reason, and there's 7 billion people on the planet. You don't need to talk to that one. That's what I would say. The only one you have to talk to is yourself. Okay. So
I like it.
Thank you.
I like it. And as you talk to yourself and you work on that energy that's resonating within you, and you start to sit in it and you start to feel it and you start to process it and you start to recognize it and you start to see the pattern for what it is, you change your attraction, how you attract to others and who you attract to yourself, because you're no longer on that frequency. You're no longer there. So now all of a sudden you got a whole new group of people that you're bringing in, and through discernment, which is a byproduct of knowing your values. I call them your internal systems. And I work with a lot of my clients to understand and learn your values, not replicate the values of the society or families that you were born into, but actually learn your true values by questioning everything you know. And I have a workbook. At some point, I'll be making it public and make it free to individuals, but it's a really in-depth workbook to help you learn your values. And from your values, you then create standards. So not to get confused with expectations. Expectations are a byproduct of when we don't know our values. But when we do know our values, we create standards. And so then we hold our standards quite high. And then we have boundaries that allow us to stay in resonance with our own standards and values. And so that is all coming home to self. And the more you sit in that, the more you change who is attracted to you and who you're attracted to.
Fantastic. Harvey, you had your hand up and then you took it down. Did you want to jump in with anything? You're good. Dan, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chris. All right. So, Lelanea, you spoke about the human experience when we're suffering or when we're in bliss and everything in between, that we're never truly alone. Now, okay, I understand that, yes, like we're veiled from source, but we're never really separated from source. But I'm more curious about like entities. Are we ever like, are we always like connected to different entities, maybe from like on different dimensions or something like that? This is really woo stuff that I'm really interested in. Like when we're suffering or when we're happy or any emotional experience we have, are we ever like, are we always surrounded by like observers or guides or anything like that? Can you talk to that?
So I'm a student of Vesica institution, which is the founder recently passed away, but he is an incredible wealth of information on esoteric sciences, right? And Rosicrucianism and a lot of oh God, I'm trying to think of his name off the top of my head. He's the creator of biodynamics. I'm losing his name right now off the top of my head, but he speaks to that particular subject very well and eloquently based off of thousands and thousands of years of information from a collection of esoteric spiritual beliefs, right? And the Rosicrucians is one of them. And I can't personally speak to that because I don't have a remembering and I don't have a relationship. But what I can say is that the woman who pulled me from the water could not be found. Her face, nothing about her body was recognized by my mother. I was the only one who saw. And even though my POV was shifting from under the water and above the water, I never saw her face or above her chest. I only saw, and I saw in great detail where I could sketch and draw her, saw a great detail of everything below. And the fact that nobody saw anything, and there was like maybe seven, 8 families there, like, and it's a small space. It allows me to sit in a place of curiosity and open-mindedness, right? And after that event, there's been numerous other events of accidents that have happened where I should not have walked out of that. I should not be alive. And it's a great mystery as to how the hell I am. And this isn't, I don't see myself as special, but I do feel that I have a great group of entities around me, and that there's something I'm supposed to do here, and they're really making sure that I get to it. Like they're really making sure I don't have an excuse to not do it. And so that's a little bit of an innate feeling within me that I can speak to. But in terms of energies, of deities or beings, I can't personally speak to it. I've had experiences with seeing energy since my awakening and since the last account of oneness. I had a huge energetic shift that had occurred. And in my life, I have seen orbs of light and could communicate with the light. I've had telepathic experiences. They're not controlled. I can't predict them. I don't know when they're going to happen. I don't know how they're going to happen. And I've lost a friend because of it. She was very freaked out by it. And so I think that created some fear around it and resistance. And so instead of moving into it, I moved away from it. And I have, since the last experience, been able to see energy in open spaces in a very different way. It's textured. It's actually visual. So I can speak to seeing energy, seeing energetic forms, which I believe are energetic imprints, also from people who have lived here and incarnated. And I can speak to that based on personal experience, but any other stuff, I don't have experience on that level. But thank you so much for that question.
You know, it's such a beautiful talk today, Lelanea. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes.
I really enjoyed everything that you shared. And when I started thinking about the universe as a mirror to myself, that everything in my life was a mirror reflecting what is within. And I don't remember exactly when I started seeing the world that way, but it was after my experience. It is such a profound thing to understand, because now, when, like, for the most part, when I'm at peace inside and my world is peaceful and serene. But if something happens where something comes in and disturbs my peace, I now look at that and go, okay, what does this mean? And what is this reflecting from within me? What is it? And it's a constant, back and forth of trying to maintain my equilibrium, being within and then seeing what is outside, reflecting back to me. And the other thing too is the idea of seeing every other person on the world as an other self, another version of me having their experience. And you extend that to, all of life, like the animals and everything else, which is a beautiful way to put that. Anyway, so I just wanted to jump in to say thank you for all of that. It's just been a wonderful talk. And Kara, you have your hand raised. Do you want to?
No, I just, I mean, what you said about animals, I thought that was, beautiful. I mean, that they, deserve to not suffer the way, humans deserve to not suffer. But then again, I'm just confused about how to incorporate, like, animals in the wild in the most natural state, will kill each other for food and survival and stuff. And so, and like humans are animals. So, again, with the, how does that, how is that incorporated into, unity?
Yeah. So my perspective on that is consciousness, right? So how the greater consciousness is all around us based off the avatar that we've moved into. Some of us experience consciousness at greater levels. We even see this within other human beings. There's some of us who are far more conscious, who have allowed ourselves to expand and receive the greater consciousness at a higher level than other human beings. But what a sad place it would be if those who have had a higher consciousness would oppress and suppress those who were not ready to open to that consciousness yet. And we see that as almost the youthfulness of souls. So we have some souls who are operating at a lower level. And so we take those souls in and we love them, because it is through love that they will find their way, and that they will be guided. Right. And so what happens in the animal kingdom, an animal comes in at a particular consciousness, and it is doing what it's meant to do in the wild, right? And it is feeding off of, sorry, I've got some sort of chaos happening outside. We got a lot of dogs. So what's happening within nature is what it's meant to be. It's how it's designed to be. There's no interference of consciousness. There's no good or bad, wrong, or, that's human labels and attachments that we become associated with. And that's also where our suffering is. So it's more about our alignments morally and ethically. And so I'm an individual that comes in and that expresses the consciousness that I receive back out as love. I don't need to hurt another animal. If I did need to eat an animal for my survival purposes, I would do it in the most loving and kind way that I could possibly do it. But I don't need to, because there's an abundance of food. It is otherworldly, the abundance of fresh vegetables and food that's around us, that's nurturing to my body, that I don't need to do that. And we look at indigenous cultures and nations that loved and honored and respected the lives that it took to feed its own body, their own bodies. There was such a great deal of respect and love and honoring for the natural world. They didn't use agricultural methods and cruelty and suffering. They didn't inflict suffering. And so I believe that is our natural way of being. And I believe that when we are connected to source, we fall back into that way of being. I believe that the support and participation in things like big ag and the intense cruelty that comes from these systems is a byproduct of separateness. So the more we lean into oneness, we go back to a more indigenous village community honoring and loving of systems. Does that help, Kira? Yeah.
Harvey, you have your hand up again?
Oh, excuse me. I would just like to say, before we go to Harvey, is there anyone else that has a question? Because we only have like 5 minutes left. Were there any other questions in the chat, or anyone who hasn't spoken yet? I know Angela put some things in the chat that her high school class became afraid of her due to her extrasensory perceptions, and that she also lost friends over that as well. So we have some.
I was just agreeing with
Okay.
what
Yeah.
with what
Yeah.
Kathy had said.
Okay,
But
thank
yeah,
you.
and the drowning experience too. I had a very similar
Mhm.
experience at Coney Island when I was 5 or 6 years old.
Mm,
So a lot of triggers here for me.
yeah.
A lot of
All right.
But
synchronicities.
this has been a great uh, group today. I mean, this is one of the reasons I keep coming back to this group. This has been one of the best, and I really thank you for that.
Oh, thank you, Angela. Okay. There's not anyone else. Okay, Harvey.
Yeah, thank you. So I had my hand raised earlier, and then in the middle of my hand being raised, I got a call from someone who is someone I work with, and we were discussing a lot of what you were discussing right now. And we all have this challenge, whether we know it or not, I believe, to recognize that we are all one. However, the behaviors and the beliefs are not who we are. And so that oneness that we experience with everyone has that contrast, as you used that word earlier, for us to recognize that behaviors and thoughts and attitudes are not that we have to keep that separate. That's our greatest challenge, is to separate our spirit or our soul, or whatever you want to call that, that emanation from the source, is different from each person's behavior and attitudes, beliefs. And so we don't need to dislike any body. Or maybe the body we can dislike, but not the soul. Maybe that's another way to look at it. Any thoughts on that?
I agree with you that we are not this mind and we are not this body. And I do believe that we are here to honor our mind and our body. And what that looks like is through mastering the mind and the body. So this body is our only avatar in this particular incarnation. And through our beliefs and our mindsets, we affect the body through inflammation, disease, deterioration. And through mastering the mind, we can support our avatar. And I believe that we're very much here to master the human experience, which is the mind and the lens in which we experience the third density, right? And again, that falls back to honor, and it falls back to discernment, and it falls back to our values and how steadfast and how true we remain in connection with ourselves. And I would also like to say that we are not this mind, we're not this body, we're not these behaviors, we're not these thoughts, and we have accountability for the behaviors and for the thoughts in the third density in the human experience. And how we hold ourselves accountable and how we master the human avatar will then change how we behave and our perspectives and our mindsets and our beliefs, which then allows us to show up much differently in this human experience. So then we can lead with love. We can lead with compassion. We can truly be pattern interrupts. We can truly be of service to ourselves, our others, to our brothers and sisters, which are us. And so what an incredible place to live, what an incredible vibration to live at, and to be in connection in that way. And that's about mastering the self.
It's funny that you're using the word master. As a wordsmith, I've been working on this idea that the master is possibly not the right word to use, simply because the other side of master is slave. And so I've been thinking of it as harmonizing with the universe instead of mastering it.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
All right. Well, that was an excellent group. Thank you, Lelanea. And everyone will get an email. And perhaps, Lelanea, you can compose a message to our group that I will send out through the email with your links. And maybe there's an attachment or two if you have something you want to attach, maybe a PDF or something for people to read. And we'll work on that together, Lelanea. And so thank you so much for coming. And now let's have some closing words from Mika and Chris. Go ahead, you guys.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was just going to say, you go ahead. I'll think of something to say.
All right. Thank you, Lelanea. I really enjoyed this session as well in the process of remembering. We actually share a teacher in Tantric meditation, Tracy Stanley. So she was also my teacher a few years ago, and also part of my journey becoming a Vishoka meditation teacher. So I really, your talk resonated a lot in terms of the dualism and non-dualism and how we are connected. And yeah, really, really, really reflecting on why we feel a certain way when we encounter certain energies or frequencies from other people. Very interesting. I really enjoyed this talk as well, and that I was able to attend. So thank you so much for being here and your presence and your reflection.
Yeah. Thank you, Mika.
Yes, thank you again. And one thing I'll add is something you said early on You spoke about, the moment that everything changes, how one moment, everything, the whole perspective can shift and change. And that has happened to me, and a number of times to varying degrees. And it's one of the things that I always remember if I am in a state where I'm not feeling particularly joyful or, anything like that. And I'm processing things and trying to let them go. But I remind myself that it only takes a moment, that in one moment of connection, the entire perspective changes. And it's just worth remembering that. Thanks for reminding us.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that feedback.
And Dan, do you want to pass it back to you to close?
Just another beautiful group. And for a number of us, it's our favorite so far. I'm sorry. Chris, you were amazing too. I thought you were fantastic. Oh my God, I'm just like tripping over my words here. I'm digging myself a grave, you know what I'm saying? Okay. So thank you, Lelanea. And we'll work on that message to folks. I have to make a trip, so we'll do it like a bit later. And stay in touch, and God bless you all. And we'll see you guys next week.
It was a pleasure sharing space with everyone.